Welcome to Hilarity by Default's weekly Brisco County Jr. review, starring the hawkish chin of Bruce Campbell. Brisco finds himself wanted for murder in episode 12, Crystal Hawks. Desperately trying to clear his name, Brisco has to contend with a previously vanquished foe back from the dead, the wily John Bly, who himself is once again on the trail of the mysterious orb, and a clever bounty hunter played by Sheena Easton. In many ways, Crystal Hawks seems like an intended Brisco capper in case the series order wasn't fulfilled. It plays like an endgame while showcasing some of the show's greatest strengths and wrapping up storylines that touch all the way back to the pilot. Because of that, I'm going to dare to say that it's a hell of a lot of fun, and I'm very curious to hear what Mr. Kyle Nash thinks about it, especially because this is yet, and I'm going to cue Bowler here, another orb episode.
That orb thing again, I hate this.
Yeah, no, and actually, it's funny you say that. The lead for me is going to be to get out of the way right off the bat. Is I'm like, oh, damn it, it's an orb episode. Well, here we go, right? But before we get too deep into it, the one thing that I'm again going to cite, as we have many times throughout the series already, Demos, is damn it, they do so many things that should not work, and yet, ... Who knew that pushing Big Smith out of a train into a gaping chasm of water off of a bridge is what it would take to get the character some depth?
Watching the pilot, in all honesty, since you touched on it, watching the pilot and seeing Big Smith in that episode, would you have thought that he would be as intriguing later on if he were to come back?
Hell no. When I even heard it whispered that, at the beginning there, Brisco alludes to the fact that, it was Big that committed a murder that he's being blamed for. And I'm like, fireball! We're going to have to see this guy again. And lo and behold, I was kind of glad to do so,
And they used the proper amount of flashbacks. They didn't overdo it. They just had just the right amount and utilized very, very well throughout the whole episode. In fact, I even may dare to say that Big Smith's eerie presence in this episode and the way that he describes the orb. Now, I'm going to touch on the revelations later in the episode, but just based on Big Smith himself, in many ways, it kind of redeems some of the sillier aspects of the orb from previous episodes for me, because he makes it a little bit more mystical. He brings it back to interest for me.
Yeah. You say mystical, I say palatable, right? And maybe adding that mysticism is what makes it palatable. Sure. It's certainly landed a lot better than use the force, Brisco, or damn it, Maggot, use the force.
Although they actually use the term the force.
Right. Yeah. Don't act like I didn't laugh at that when I heard it, having watched that episode shortly after recording the Ghost Dad episode, right?
This is definitely a step up from Senior Spirit, because that episode practically destroyed that storyline for me.
Yeah, I know it's called Senior Spirit, but, BS, Demos, okay? It's the Ghost Dad episode, just like it's not called The Mandalorian, it's called The Baby Yoda Show, all right?
From its opening, which is probably one of the more effective Brisco County openings. I mean, with the rainstorm and so forth, somehow Sheena Easton doesn't get wet, but regardless, overall, it's fast-paced, energetic, and suspenseful. Some great set pieces. I love the foot chase in particular. A foot chase that involves a haphazard blind man and a falling piano. How can you hate on that?
If you're looking for a response, you're not getting one from me, Chief. Honestly, it's not the action pieces per se that draw me to this episode. This is going to sound corny, but I like the opening scene kind of the best for two reasons. A, sets up the episode. Well, three, I should say. Sets up the episode. B, the escape of the pulling down of the bookcase. Really, really appreciate that.
It's not over the top.
Certainly not. And then lastly, the way he runs in to Crystal made a lot of sense. Oh, this is another chick who thinks I'm had. First chick I've met like this that isn't wet, but okay. And thank you. And then all of a sudden, gotcha, bitch. And the whole thing with the rope and the hey, use chains. Hey, thanks for telling me about the change. All that. It just starts from that moment.
It sets up a great mystery and it sets up a great pursuit. And I'd even add a letter D to your assessment and say that there's a lot of atmosphere there, which I enjoyed. In many ways.
But
since you talked about Crystal Hawk, I love the byplay that she has with Bruce Campbell. She's a very fun character, and precisely because she brings out the more sarcastic, cunning side from Briscoe. I loved all their interactions, especially in the first half of the episode.
Rule number 4, try chains. They work a lot better than ropes.
You know, I like that she just wasn't the typical, oh, I'm a strong female character. Look at me. You know, there was enough flaw there to be reasonable. Like, the whole ropes thing. But to show an element of humility to her to be like, hey, thanks for the tip on the chains, bitch.
Rule number 6, the biggest gun usually wins.
And though it was a bit cliched with her in the dress and how all that went, I really liked how it was played when Bowler accurately identifies Crystal Hawk by way of her response to the dress.
I really do enjoy this character. She came in fully fleshed out. She fit right in. I don't necessarily think that her chemistry is as strong as Kelly Rutherford's chemistry is with Bruce Campbell. They hit a very specific note. She brings a completely different element to the table.
But as a whole side note too, Bowler, once again, strong. When he's around town identifying all the bounty hunters, that was something I thought was really cool.
I will say that him posing as the colonel, comedy gold. I'm serving under.
Exactly. I don't know how practical or realistic it was, but it was hilarious.
No, probably not very, very practical at the time, but it was done with such comedic conviction that yes. I'm perfectly okay with it.
Oh, I let it slide too, absolutely.
I mean, everything with Bowler is great, and once again, some of his snide remarks about the orb, I enjoyed very, very much, because I'm like, he's doing our job for us. Thank you, Bowler. Or Mr. Lord.
As a side note, someone's got to feel like Bowler, from that standpoint, was therapy for the writers, man. Like, this orb again.
You need to quit messing with that orb thing, Briscoe.
The time travel revelation, on the other hand, I wasn't too particularly keen about. First, it appears in the series as perhaps an ancient artifact. Then it's an unidentified space entity. And now it's from the future. Even Briscoe, in this episode, seems lost, even trying to explain what the hell is going on.
That's right, the orb. It's a long story.
I still feel like they're kind of trying to figure it out. Now, if it actually turns out it's from the future, I mean, that does kind of fit the next big thing narrative, okay? But I'm with you. Granted, it depends on how they stick that landing, but that could be corny if they're not careful.
In general, I'd love time travel stories when they're done well, and in my opinion, there are very few, especially in TV shows, there are very few that do it very, very well. Right. And over here, especially since it's had kind of the orb story has had kind of a clunky beginning, to infuse that idea into it, it just seems, to me at the very least, to be a little bit forced.
I would pose the question, did the writers know what it was supposed to be as they're writing these episodes?
I think that when it comes to the orb, that they were figuring it out as they went.
Yeah.
I wish for once somebody would give me a straight answer about this orb.
John Bly. Oh, yeah. Man. I mean, this is a great ensemble piece. Overall. I mean, even Comet has his standout moments. But John Bly, in particular here, is deliciously wicked. He even makes eating bread look threatening.
Yeah, right?
But I also like the fact that they respect him as a villain. When in the climax, Briscoe does beat him, he's never humiliated. He still maintains an aura of a threat.
Oh, yes. I'm not done here. That kind of thing,
I think that's a mistake that a lot of films and TV shows do with the villain that they've built up. They try to, and they hope to bring back. They have to knock him down a peg or two, and then when they come back, it's like, oh, okay, well, why are you even here? We've already beaten you. But John Bly, even in defeat, still remains a threat to me, especially if the man has bread.
So, like, the comparison I want to offer as another villain where that's done effectively, if you're looking for that vibe that we're trying to display here, like Spike from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, okay? When the intro featured him, you knew something was about to go down, right?
Watch out!
This is a Bly episode, you know, same thing.
There's only one thing in this episode that I don't like at all. One thing, and that's the coda at the very, very end of the episode when Socrates comes in and says, Big Smith is dead and John Bly has escaped. And I have a theory to why that's there. But before I get to, what did you think of that scene?
Well,
it felt very tacked on to me.
It's because it was.
Exactly.
I mean, right? I mean, first of all, we both have a general idea. I'm going to assume I know already what your guess was, is they did show and didn't tell and ran out of time, right? The episode was long and they decided to cut it. And I think the reason they would have decided to cut it is, y'all, the people out there know that Bly's going to escape. They know he's going to firewall escape, okay? So why are we wasting time showing this? If we're going to cut something, cut this. It was a scene we may not have particularly liked in execution anyway. You know, let Socrates be, you know, worry Debbie Downer, which we've used him to be many times, except do it in a very real and cold-blooded manner.
My theory is a little different, and I don't have any facts to support this, but I'm very certain this is what happened. Now, many series, when they're picked up, tend to have a 13-episode order.
Uh-oh, here comes the conspiracy theory. Okay.
This is the 12th episode, but if the pilot, which is a two-parter, is to be considered, this is the 13th episode. I think that it was intentionally filmed as a potential closer to the series if it wasn't picked up again, and that the episode ended with John Bly getting arrested. When the series was picked up, when the series was picked up again, they filmed that little coda and added it to this episode, so the storyline will continue.
So let me give you this compliment. I think you need to research that, not because I'm worried about you being incredible or not doing it correctly or any of that. I mean, that theory's so good, if you purvey that, people may just believe it when it's true or not.
If we can get Bruce Campbell for an interview, I'm going to straight up ask him and hope to God that he remembers.
In that case, with this, well, I mean, he took the time to show some excitement when we were
first starting.
Yeah, when we were first announcing we were going to do this. That tells me if he was interested enough to do that he would know the story about whether or not his series got picked up.
I like the comedy. I like the action. I like the dialogue. I like the character interactions, and it made the orb interesting again. I have very, very little to complain about here.
You know, the only complaints I have is stuff we've touched on. I just think the orb looks stupid. I'm sorry.
How many comments do you give Crystal Hawks?
Yeah, I'll give it a 4 if we're not doing halves.
You know, it's kind of funny because if we were giving halves, and we're not, because we've already discussed how we don't like dissecting poor Comet. He does so much. If I were to give it halves, I'd probably give it 4.5. I actually really, really like this episode. I think it's very strong. My biggest issue, and what would knock it down by a half, is that coda that I think kind of unravels a lot of what I enjoyed about this episode. It almost completely undoes the episode. An argument that to me is it strikes such a bad chord, and for that reason alone, I'm giving it a 4.
That's interesting, because I feel like that put a worse taste in your mouth than mine, yet you're still scoring the episode higher. What I hear you telling
we're giving it 4. We're both giving it 4.
Well, you said 4.5 to think about it, but you're giving it 4. So what I'm hearing you say is if that coda it was handled better, you could have 5 commented this beat.
Possibly, yeah.
Oh, okay. I mean, listen,
I enjoyed it from beginning to end. I mean,
I know I didn't like it enough for it to be a 5.
I think that if I were to give this a final assessment, it would be that despite the disappointing coda, I think that Crystal Hawks is a crystal clear winner. I think it's a strong mid-season episode. I will say that, Kyle. I think it's easily one of the strongest in the first 12. Breezy fun, memorable lines, great moments, and the first satisfying ending showdown between Briscoe and Bly that we've seen. So we'll see. I think that overall this is a very, very strong episode. Very highly recommended. 4 stars from both of us. And we'll just have to wait and see what the coming thing is. So join us every week as we cover all 27 episodes of The Adventures of Brisco County Jr. We invite you to watch along and let us know in the comments below what your thoughts are on each episode. And make sure to like and subscribe for more fun from Hilarity by Default.